A show so big, so grand, you can see it from space. A holy day. Weebs rejoice. An artist's dream con. Legend has it that money falls straight from the sky into my hand. And despite all this, I tell you this one inconceivable fact. I am terrified. Let me take you back to the year 2023. An assassination attempt was had on my life. I barely escaped. Forever scarred. The only thing that will heal these wounds. Like and subscribe. But wait, you might say, is this clickbait? And I would say, no, 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 no. I have my booth in the artist alley. The first day has passed. Everything's gone great. Our pockets are filled with money, rich as can be. And in the middle of the night, one of those dumb little security vehicles that you see rolling around every convention tried to kamikaze my booth at 3 a.m. An assassination attempt. You might ask, how? I have been known to sleep under my artist alley table before. Not this day. But how would the assassin know? Mix that with a little paranoia, and anything is possible. Not to mention, I had moved to LA a week prior to this, so my apartment looked like a bomb had gone off, and now my table looks like a bomb went off. Everyone and their mother also wanted to stay at my place for the show. Sleeping bags as far as the eye can see, covering my apartment. Moving boxes against every wall. Needless to say, my stress levels were a little high. When I walk in 20 minutes early to the show on Saturday, a surprising revelation was had. Seeing my booth pushed 10, 12 feet into the opposite direction of where it belongs, my merch all over the ground, 4 to 5 other tables also damaged, I started frantically cleaning. It wasn't until the show was about to open that I realized that I needed to take some photos, so keep in mind that this booth looked a lot worse when I had shown up. Whatever had hit my booth had pushed it in such a way that it also collided with the 4 or 5 other booths next to me, pushing theirs as well out of place and damaging much of their setup. My direct neighbor, who I think had the majority of damage, had actually shown up to the con about an hour early that morning and informed me that they had fixed much of the damage, so I was unable to get photos, but according to them, most of their display was on the floor, including their print displays, damaging a lot of their merch. And then the table next to them, their display was barely standing with half of it collapsing. And then 3 booths from them, one of my friends' booths was also affected, although their display remained mostly intact, a little bent up. A lot of their merch exploded out of the back of their booth, going everywhere all over the hall. Whatever did crash into our booths hit it with quite a bit of force. After speaking with staff, I believe that they did request to get security footage, but the convention hall failed to provide that for us, so we will never know what actually occurred in the late hours of July 3rd, 2023. After some investigations, we found that there was a rather large dent in the actual wood of the table that was a bit vehicle-shaped, on top of there being tire marks on the drapery of my table. What had truly happened is still unclear, whether it was the cleaning crew or security that may have just been a little too tipsy at 3 a.m. in some form of an accident, or whether this was more targeted. Forever unclear. However, what is clear is I lost about $1,000 worth of merch, and a good chunk of my display was damaged beyond repair. Luckily, I had some friends at the show that let me borrow some of their extra displays, and because I was then local, I was able to replenish my supply. Even though my booth was the point of impact, my main displays are put up with these really heavy-duty clamps that are actually meant for streaming and are supposed to support really expensive camera equipment. And luckily, they didn't collapse on impact. However, the tables next to me had more traditional artist alley setups. Let us just say they weren't as collision-proof. So I'm going into this year a little nervous. Next to the good stuff. Structure's done. Pretty happy with how it turned out. Knock this over. I double dog dare you. Come on. Crazy new addition. Normally I hate these artist alley cubes everybody uses. I've kind of shit on them a lot, but you know, storage. We'll see how they go. We'll see if I'm gonna eat my words. So, you know, if something does hit us, these will be the first to go, but everything else should be pretty good. This sign is 1 year late. Right off the bat, I want to say that this year felt very different from years past. I know there was a lot of safety concerns from last year and the year before of overcrowding and the dangers that might be caused because of overcrowding of such a high level. And I have to say that I think Anime Expo really addressed that issue this year. It didn't feel so much like LineCon, fairly easy to get to one end of the artist alley from the other. There was still a lot of people, but the theory is that tickets were capped, and it felt pretty substantial. I've had some people say that it was 75%. I've had some people say that it was 50%. Either way, there was definitely a lot less people at the show. As somebody attending the con, I think that it was probably a much more pleasant experience. Now, as a small business, that's a lot less people I can sell stuff to. Obviously, prioritizing safety concerns is definitely the way to go, so I applaud AX for that. However, the cost of attending or even exhibiting at the show have definitely risen over the last year. As a small business, that makes my upfront costs higher and my potential profits lower. So I'm going to have to offer better products to try to close that gap to even make the same amount I made the year prior. This makes things more competitive. This makes it harder for a new artist to enter spaces like this.
Yeah, what are you doing over here? What are you doing? No, stop. No way. What are you doing? Don't show anybody. My window's back. No. No. I don't want to go viral. No, stop. No, stop. Stop.
As an example, people's booth game was top notch this year. You couldn't dream of seeing booths this well designed and put together even like 4 or 5 years ago. Now, this is a huge benefit to attendees. When I started conventions a couple years ago, the exhibitor hall was like the place to be, and now I don't think that's the case anymore. Artist Alley is where it's at. Now, I don't think a new artist should just start out with a show like Anime Expo, but this competitiveness is pretty universal. Also, there's just more information out there than there was in years prior, kind of like this channel. Overall, I think competition for the marketplace is always a good thing. If you're an artist and you're thinking about selling your work at an artist alley or a convention, my biggest suggestion is to start sooner than later. Things are only going to get harder, and the sooner you get that experience, the bigger advantage you will have. So, being a little blindsided by the fact that there's a lot less attendees there than expected makes my wallet a little sad. Now, don't get me wrong, we made a lot of money and definitely covered all of our expenses. It's still an above average show, and nobody tried to murder me, so a good year. That being said, if it wasn't for this dungeon mess tonight, I would be buried. I would be bankrupt, which was like a third of my sales.
If you're a broke boy, just say so.
Now, how did this actually affect the numbers? Well, this year, I pulled in about $12,000, and I suppose my assistant helped in this. However, I was working extremely diligently behind the booth. Comparing that to last year's $16,000. I know, boo-hoo, woe is me, but that's a $4,000 difference, and that'll get you a lot of Baja Blast.
Now we're doing Taco Bell, which I've heard is horrific.
What? Who said this?
And don't you be a silly goose, because you know we paying for those delivery fees. It's not like I'd be caught dead talking to a real person at the drive-thru. So a pretty substantial difference, and I had a lot of new stuff this year where last year not only did I lose stock, I also sold out of stuff, and some of my prints hadn't arrived in time. So I went into this show in a much better position than I did last year and still made quite a bit less money. Now don't you worry, I still know how to spend $12K. I'll put that sucker in my pocket and have a good time. Pray that I get through these hard times. So just keep in mind that the convention space is forever changing. Expenses for this year were as followed. So the booth and the badges were $653 in total. I had no hotel or flight as I'm local. I spent about $60 in gas and $180 in parking. And then my food cost, because the convention food is super expensive for no reason, it was about $320 for two. I also had an assistant, so I paid them a total of $2,280. And I pay them based on a percentage of what I made, so that's where I get that number. My total expenses being about $3,500. If I had to add like a $500 flight and then a $1,000 hotel or something, which is definitely in the realm of possibility being downtown LA, you could see my profits starting to dwindle a little bit. But also, you don't necessarily have to hire an assistant. And for you super math nerds, my production averages around 20% of what I sell my items for. So if we take out our expenses and this, again, estimated production cost, you'll get a more accurate understanding of my actual profit margins. Now, the show is still an above average show, and everybody that I had talked to seemed to still do well enough, but there was a pretty general consensus that sales were quite down from the year prior. And I think because the economy in the United States right now is kind of on the decline, and a lot of people are struggling with paying bills, I think a lot of people are still going to the show, but they're spending all their money just getting through the door. So then to spend that little extra money that they might have on a luxury good like art might be a bit of a hurdle for a lot of people. And where Anime Expo is really focused on fandoms, and I do a lot of original concept, the demographic of a show like this just might not be in my favor. I don't think that's going to be the case at every single show because the demographic obviously will change, but I think at this show it definitely was a factor. There's another aspect of this that I want to talk about. Over the course of the weekend, I gave away about 4,000 to 5,000 business cards. That's a lot of people who showed interest in my work. However, I only confirmed about 400 sales. That conversion rate isn't the best in my experience. Not every interaction I have at a convention needs to end in a sale to be considered successful or beneficial to my company. Obviously, there's brand recognition, and just meeting some of you guys was definitely a highlight of my weekend. However, I think we can get that conversion rate a little higher. I think there's some things that I haven't adapted to as quickly as I could have, as the economy is forever shifting, that could have helped me out through the weekend a little bit more. With my product design, I have really focused on quality and making, unique packaging and other types of things like that, that keeps my price point a bit higher than the average Artist Alley artist. The cheapest thing at my booth is $10, but my average sale is closer to $60. So I think this prices out a lot of people who would be interested in my work otherwise, especially at an anime convention where the crowds are typically a bit younger than, say, other events. I think moving forward, diversifying the price range that I offer my products at would be a benefit. I don't want to get rid of those, say, higher end products, but introducing items that are more attainable to a larger audience I think is a good thing, especially right now, and still retaining some level of quality. Something that I've noticed over the last couple years is that tables that are offering lower priced items or smaller items are really on the rise right now, where artists that were offering more higher end, more fine artsy stuff kind of are struggling at the moment, which aligned more with my sales strategy from years past. Where a few years ago, when people had more disposable income, it was quite the opposite of this. So being a little quicker to adapt to shopping patterns like this is something I should keep an eye on a bit closer in the future. Some of the highlights this year was that I got to participate in my first stamp rally, and overall, because of the less traffic within the hall, actually got to walk around and enjoy myself. Getting to see the 4 billion fireworks go off right as the sun set in downtown LA. I also set up a little tea party behind my booth.
Is it time to eat cake? Oh. Cheers.
I'm ruining your video.